Welcome everyone to our third interview. I'm here with Ollie. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Sidiqyar. I'm a senior at Brentwood High School. I've been debating for 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, so unlike our other interviews, instead of like more practice and drilling questions, this is going to be more prepping based one.
Ooh,
So if you want to, we can go ahead and get right into the questions.
let's get to it.
Yeah, so the first section is more personal about you. So like how did you maintain school and other activities while also be able to research and prep as much as you can?
I'd say, and at sometimes I didn't, but I think it's like an important lesson to learn. It's like a question of priorities. Because if you want to be like, first you have to ask yourself like where you want to go in debate. But if you really want to be like about it, like go really far, you need to be like thinking about debate at all times. Just like anyone who wants to be very successful in any kind of competitive event, like an athlete who's going to go like D1 in basketball is probably constantly thinking about like their offense or whatever and like their basketball plays and like whatever. Like they're not thinking about like their like calc class, even if they're sitting in class. Debate's kind of the same way. Especially I think my sophomore year is a really good example. I would just be sitting in all my classes, just like cutting cards, and I had like 200 missing assignments. But obviously, like school is very important too.
Yeah.
So you have to like find that balance. I think like the ideal way, I think it's like good that debate forces you to like manage your time, and it's important to have your priorities straight because at the end of the day, your schoolwork and a lot of other things are still going to be like more important for your future. But like that said, it's important to invest time in your passions, especially if debate is one of them. Researching is also a very good skill to develop. So just make sure you prioritize well to like answer your question. But it's very good if you're finding yourself investing a lot of time in it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, when you initially joined debate, did you think like prepping was going to be a hassle and something you didn't want to do, or like do you think that's something that got you into it in the first place?
I'd say, well, I guess whenever I first joined, I didn't know like the full extent that prepping could go,
Hmm.
especially because I was like, my first year, whenever I was a freshman, I just debated like the local circuit in Tennessee, and we just have like the one case. We didn't really have blocks, maybe just like two sentences, like 2 pages, whatever, like really stupid, and like our like case would be like really bad, and I would just like rushedly write my cases like before our practices and stuff. So and like it would just be a bunch of like random words. Like I didn't fully understand the extent like to where it goes. I think over time I developed those skills. Like honestly, not even to like last year. Like I was still like getting better. I'm still getting better now in terms of
Hmm.
like finding good evidence and like writing good, efficient case responses, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a skill you develop. What was your question again?
Like
I'm really waffling right now.
well, when you first joined debate, do you think like
Oh yeah, yeah.
perception is going to be a hassle?
Yeah, I think like over time, I really like enjoy, especially I love case writing, just like finding all these strats and stuff. Like it's something watching them like get set in motion
Hmm.
is I didn't really like know like how deep it went when I first joined, but over time I kind of learned to love it. I know there's definitely like times where I'll be like, man, like I just don't want to cut blocks, but sometimes like if you're like really competitive, you're really about it, like you'll just like put your head down, eventually just get it done, and
Yeah.
like it definitely pays off.
And so like if at times you never actually want to prep or like you're too tired, like what other alternatives did you find? Like maybe using the wiki or going on like asking friends,
Yeah.
like what other alternatives are there?
Yeah. Well, first, I think Wiki is a very important tool, maybe for all the like specific like warrants they give. Like whenever people talk about disclosure, I like always after like major tournament weekends all the time look through
Mhm.
like all of the wiki, like every like good team, every case. And it's not necessarily to like steal the arguments, but it's more so to get an idea of like what the meta is, what strats people are reading, like what's been effective, what hasn't been effective. So
Mhm.
that way I can kind of cater my strategy towards that. Like if there's this new argument that like everybody's reading after like the first month of the topic and like everybody's copying it, whatever, I'm thinking, okay, what argument can I write or what would be a very strategic way to win against this argument?
Mhm.
So I kind of like use the strats to like base my own strats off of it. Outside of that, I'd say it's obviously very good to prep with like friends and like that you know and trust their prep and you know they'll be putting in the work. It's very good to kind of like develop that kind of a community.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I think it's also good, like even if you like your friends aren't very like as good of preppers as you, as long as you have people who keep you accountable, it'll
Mhm.
really help push you. Just like push
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah, that's really smart. And like this is very tailored to you. What do you think was what topic did you prep the most for?
Like, hmm, probably some topic last year. I don't know if there was any that really stands out more than the others. Maybe like probably like West Asia, Nats, whatever.
Okay,
Any of like
okay.
the second semester topics last year. That's when I really got in my
Yeah.
khalta. That means bag.
And do you remember how many cards you cut or no?
I don't really keep track of the exact number. I don't tag my cards either. Maybe it's just everyone's telling me I should start doing that. But whenever I see them popping up, I'm like, very interesting. I wonder where this came from. Like I'll just like scrolling through the wiki, like,
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely some people that like recur
uh,
keep on going on the wiki, like slash slash
uh,
PLS, like people like that.
I'm
Like,
sure we'll see slash slash DM on there.
hopefully, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm
Okay.
not even like that. There's definitely other people who are definitely on it way more than me. But it's always
Yeah.
exciting when you see something you cut pop up. That hasn't
Yeah.
happened to me too much though.
Okay. So the next is just general questions about prepping and like less personal. So first, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important do you think prepping for a topic is in order to succeed and like do good at tournaments?
Like 8.5. Like obviously you don't have like any prep at all. You just like can't really debate effectively. Like
Hmm.
don't have case or whatever, but then it becomes like a spectrum to where maybe you have like good cases, you don't have blocks and you'll do like a little better. But I
Yeah.
think like just as important as having good prep or like
Hmm.
decent prep or whatever is knowing your prep. Like I'd rather be a team who has like meh prep, but like knows their arguments, knows all their evidence really well, than be a team who just takes really good prep like off the wiki or whatever, but
Yeah.
doesn't understand it at all. A very
Hmm.
good example of this was January, my sophomore year. So at first we went to Sunvite, and me and Eli Griffinstraw,
Hmm.
and we broke. We got to dubs, and we had like a decent tournament overall. But our cases were like bad. Like our arguments like did not make sense. It was like the first tournament on the topic. Like we
Hmm.
had barely prepped. Like we put it together very quickly. But like of the really bad cases, like we knew them really well. We knew all the evidence really well. So we are
Hmm.
able to frontline really effectively, etc. So like we did well, even though like our prep wasn't the best. Alternatively, we get like a little later into the topic. I think it was Colombia where
Hmm.
we didn't break. We went 3-3, didn't do as well as we wanted to, but our prep was much better because we had gotten a little bit of inspiration from Brentwood HM, a great force that year about like what arguments they were reading. We kind of tried to like base it off of that because we're like, oh yeah, like their arguments are so good or whatever from practice rounds and stuff. But because
Hmm.
we didn't understand it, we didn't know it, we weren't able to frontline as effectively. We didn't know the strats, the weighing, or like the reasons those were good arguments, and we ended
Hmm.
up doing worse than we did with like bad prep. So it's
Yeah.
important, but I think more important is actually understanding it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like, do you think it's more important to have more prep than like actual skill and practicing drills or like vice versa?
I'd say like it's like both are important. I think like the prep comes more into like the first half of the round,
Hmm.
although it can like leak into the back half too if you prep strats and stuff. I think you always have to be able to think on your feet because inevitably like you'll reach an argument and just have no blocks to whatever, and you like come into situations where having that strategy and that like skill will translate. And I also think your skill translates into your prep inherently. Like
Hmm.
someone who's not a very efficient speaker will probably also write like an inefficient case. Someone
Yeah.
who like brings up a lot of like random examples that don't need to be brought up will probably also put like random examples in their case.
Hmm.
That's also like on that note of efficiency is very important. But I think a lot of it like translates. It's not like you just be a very good debater who just has like terrible prepping skills. Like even like a very good debater who doesn't have a lot of prep will give like good analytics, etc. And
Yeah.
someone who's very good at prepping will know how to like word responses, how to like make arguments like fundamentally.
Yeah, so besides making like actual arguments like case or contentions or like blocks, like what do you think is like an additional benefit from like prepping itself?
Like benefit like another like thing to prep or like a benefit like
Like
just to your skill as a whole.
knowledge gained or
Yeah.
like background information or anything like that.
Like wait, I'm confused about your question. Like
So
like your background information, like stuff that helps you for debate, or just like how prepping helps you externally.
like in a debate round specific, like you said, like if somebody doesn't prep that much, like they have like or like they don't cut that many cards, but they still do a lot of research, do you think that's like also beneficial and like you don't need to
Oh
have like
yeah.
a bunch of these cards cut?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say, well, like I think having cards is still important. Like that's what's
Hmm.
going to consist of your speeches and stuff. But the background knowledge can be really helpful in a couple of ways. I don't think you can have just go solely on background knowledge and isolation of actual cards because then you
Yeah.
don't really have anything to back up what you're saying. So like especially if you get into rounds where they call for evidence and you just don't have it, that becomes problematic. But in some cases, for example, if you're talking cross and they tell you to like give examples and you start giving like really random examples, like for example, on the
Hmm.
March topic this last year on the Artemis Accords, I remember I was just like really into it. I was like reading all like the different like UN treaties on space and all of that. And I just like knew all of like the stuff. And sometimes there's a little bit of lying involved. But my opponents would just like come up and like be like, yeah, but have you considered the Moon Treaty? And I was like, the Moon Treaty was signed in like 1979 by 66 countries, and whatever was not one of them. I just started going on like this long rant, and we
Hmm.
won the round. The judge is like, you guys just seem so knowledgeable. Because a lot of, especially like in lay rounds, they'll just vote on whoever seems like better researched, better prepared. And if you have that background knowledge, you're really able to effectively use it, not just in cross, but in speeches too. Just
Hmm.
point out the very obvious or things your opponents might not have considered. It makes you seem that like you really like know your stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And like, do you think it's like which one would you prioritize, like cutting for a case or cutting for blocks? Like, which one do you
I'd
think
say
like, yeah.
definitely case, and then when it comes to blocks turns, because ultimately offense can win you rounds.
Hmm.
So if I had to choose between like having like a good like a really good case strat versus like meh case and really good blocks, I'd choose case like a million times, because you can find like good strat spikes to where you can win with your case and good weighing, whereas you can't necessarily win with like good defense.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think like in either like either for a case or for blocks, like which is more important, like quality or quantity of cards?
Definitely quality. Like,
Hmm.
especially like realistically, you're not going to read like seven blocks to an argument in a round.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times, I think in the past I've been like in prepping arrangements where I'll just like not want to read like prep that I didn't cut because I'll be like this is bad. Or sometimes I cut bad stuff myself. And when it comes to
Hmm.
the actual tournament, like before the tournament, like like look, we have 200 pages of blocks. Like we're really gonna be like go crazy. And then in the actual tournament, I'm like I'm not reading this. Like this is bad. Like why would I
Yeah.
read this? Like I'll just give like a good analytic. So if it's like not like worth it, like it ends up not being effective at all.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. And so the next section is about the Arctic topic specifically. Pretty short section. So, like while you're prepping and researching, like what is one neg argument that you found like really interesting to you?
I really think overstretch is an intriguing argument on this topic. I just think it has really good weighing.
Hmm, yeah, and what do you think about an AF argument?
Hmm. Let's see. Watch out the Brahma disclosure pages for when we disclose Alaska. That's a really silly argument I wrote. Just watch
Okay.
out. We'll bring it out soon. We haven't broken it yet.
Okay. Okay. And do you think like this is kind of more general prepping based, but do you think it's important to like prep out an argument? Like if you like hit, let's say you hit Alaska and spraying and you don't have blocks, like do you think right after that round like you should start making blocks and cutting prep to it, or you think like you should just like wait more time?
I think it depends. Obviously, you have a lot to think about during tournaments like itself when you're really in it. You don't have
Hmm.
too much time. Maybe you have to focus on your next round, whatever. So
Yeah.
I think if you think the argument's really good, but more importantly, if it'll come out up in like your later rounds, if other people would be reading it too,
Hmm.
then it makes sense to like prep it out and start like making sure you prepare for the future. But like the once like a round is over, it's over. It's not like you can go back and like read blocks that you cut afterwards for that round.
Yeah.
So unless you think it's like beneficial for the rest of your tournament, probably don't spend your time doing it. But especially like if you're like about to debate a team, you see that they're reading like some really weird argument, you hear like from someone else's like flows or whatever, they're reading some really weird argument, and you have time before. That's especially when I would prioritize prepping out like those squirrely arguments.
Yeah, and last but not least, for this topic specifically, like what advice can you give someone in terms of prepping? Like what to focus on or what are
Hmm.
some key like what's some advice?
I guess this is true for this topic, but I also think just a lot of topics in general. I just think more broadly, like I talked about earlier, how like I like to read like all like disclosed case, try to form my strats like beyond what like people are reading. So I'd say just like look at all the arguments like whatever the stock arguments, deterrence, escalation, oil, fishing, whatever,
Yeah.
and like write them out for each side. Try to think about like commonalities and try to think of like ways you can get ahead, whether it's like an argument, like an impact that turns a lot of those arguments really well and like ways that you can like put yourself in a really good position for back halves and
Hmm.
like weighing whatever. So that way you're just like inherently strategically ahead and then
Yeah.
try to cater your arguments around that. So that way you can like not only have arguments that kind of break the mold, but you
Hmm.
also have like arguments that like work really well in the back half too. So catch people off guard in the front half and like way well in the back half.
Well, thank you, Ollie.
Uh,
Thank you all for joining us. Have a good day.